The sun crawled over the wide red river. Plains as a pale orange glow washed across the lonely ranch where Elias Ward lived in silence, far from towns, far from old memories, and far from the chaos he once knew too well. Elias wasn't a talker, wasn't a man who invited company, and wasn't the kind of soul who feared solitude. He was a rancher.com as Stillwater, with years etched into his face and a quiet strength that spoke louder than any gunshot. Every morning he stepped out before dawn, feeding horses, checking fences, repairing whatever time tried to break. It was the same peaceful routine until this morning, when the ground beneath him trembled just slightly with a warning he knew in his bones, hoofbeats, many of them. He paused, hand resting against the cedar frame of his cabin door, where a small carved symbol burned into the wood shimmered under the early light. The Cherokee mark of Anagoth, a white warrior granted only to men who had earned lifelong brothers among the Cherokee. Years ago, Elias had saved a village in a winter storm so brutal it swallowed mountains. He fought beside the warriors, shared their hardships, and carried their wounded through blizzards. When he parted ways, the village elder Atsa carved that mark into a piece of cedar and handed it to Elias as a bond that could never be broken. Elias later set that cedar into his doorway, not as a threat, but as a promise. The mark had protected his land for 15 years, until now. The Black Mesa Gang, 8 blood-cold outlaws feared across counties, were crossing the plains toward him. They had robbed trade posts, killed ranchers, and burned homes not for survival, but for the thrill of breaking men. Their leader, Rafe Coulter, was a scar-faced devil who enjoyed making people beg. Rumor said he wanted gold Elias supposedly hid from his scouting days. Rumors spread by men who never understood the Lone Rancher's quiet truth. Elias didn't own gold. What he owned was respect. But criminals didn't understand respect until they were forced to. He walked to the hitching post, stroking the neck of his stallion as dust clouds rose in the distance. The hoofbeats grew louder, angrier, and the prairie birds took flight from the grass. Elias exhaled slowly. He wasn't panicking. Fear wasn't something he wore anymore. He had walked with men who didn't fear even the storm gods, Cherokee warriors who moved with silent death and unbreakable loyalty. Yet Elias didn't want bloodshed. Not today. Not here. Not on land that grew from sweat and peace. As the gang approached, their laughter cut through the morning air like rusted metal. Rafe rode ahead, his eyes hungry, his grin cruel. "Well, boys," he called out, "looks like the old man's awake to welcome us." They surrounded the ranch like wolves circling quiet prey. Elias stood by the doorway, hands relaxed, eyes unreadable. Rafe dismounted, swaggering forward with the confidence of someone who believed the world belonged to him. "Morning, rancher," he sneered. "We heard you got something valuable in that house of yours." Elias didn't blink. "Only thing valuable here is the peace you're about to disturb." The gang laughed, but their laughter died fast as one of them tugged on the doorframe and noticed the carved mark. His hand froze midair. "Rafe," he whispered, voice cracking, "you'd better take a look at this." Rafe rolled his eyes until he saw it. The symbol, the sacred Cherokee Aniga mark. His face lost color. "Where'd you get this?" Rafe snapped. Elias stayed silent. Rafe knew the answer but didn't want to believe it. Outlaws talked at campfires. They shared stories of what happened to men who trespassed Cherokee-marked land. Whole gangs disappeared. Bodies were never found. Rafe tried to steady himself. "I don't care what mark that is," he growled, but even he heard the tremor in his own voice. Elias finally spoke, his tone quiet and dangerous. "That mark means you should turn around and ride away while you still can." The gang exchanged uneasy glances, but greed is louder than fear. Rafe drew his gun. "Boys, take everything." Before they could move, the wind shifted, carrying something faint but unmistakable. Hoofbeats, not fast, not aggressive.com controlled. Many riders. The gang turned toward the distant ridge as shapes appeared, first shadows, then silhouettes, then men. 12 Cherokee warriors riding in formation, silent as ghosts, deadly as winter. Their presence froze the gang like stone. At the front rode Atsa, older now but still fierce, eyes sharp as an eagle's. He didn't shout. He didn't brandish a weapon. He simply dismounted and walked toward Elias with the authority of a man who knew the spirits walked with him. "Brother," Atsa said in Cherokee, touching Elias's arm, "we felt danger breathing on your land." Elias nodded. "I knew you would come." The warriors spread out, surrounding the gang with calm precision. Rafe's men panicked. One dropped his rifle. Another fell to his knees. Rafe pointed his gun at Elias, but a tomahawk flew and lodged into the ground inches from his foot. A warning shot. Atsa stepped forward. "You stand on protected ground," he said, "and you threaten a man who carries our mark. That means you threaten all of us." Rafe stammered. We didn't know." "We knew enough," Atsa replied. Elias stepped toward the gang leader. "I don't want bloodshed, but I won't let you destroy what's mine." Rafe looked around. 8 outlaws against 12 warriors who fought like shadows and wind. He had no chance. What do you want from us?" Elias tilted his head. "For you to understand the meaning of respect." Atsa gave the sentence. "Leave your horses, leave your guns, walk back across the desert until you remember humility. If you return, you won't walk out again." The gang was stripped of weapons, boots, pride. One warrior carved a different mark into Rafe's saddle, one that warned other tribes of cowardice. The gang began their long walk into the scorching plains, humiliated, broken, and lucky to be alive. When they were far enough, Atsa turned to Elias. "You live far from our village, but your bond with us has no distance." Elias smiled faintly. "And I'll always stand with you. You saved me once too." Atsa nodded, the weight of old memories passing between them. Battles fought, cold nights survived, trust forged through fire. The warriors mounted their horses and rode back toward the horizon, moving like a single spirit. Elias watched until they vanished into the golden haze. The ranch was quiet again, the danger gone, as if swept away by the wind. He touched the Cherokee mark on his door, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, bros." And then, calmly, as though nothing extraordinary had happened, he picked up a bucket, fed his horses, and returned to the rhythm of his life, knowing that though he lived alone, he would never stand alone, ever.